Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you calling this hearing. Vice Chair, thank you for being here and being accessible, as the ranking member mentioned. I will say, chairing another committee and thinking about the bland opening comments I make, Senator Brown, I admired the cadence and rhetorical flair of your opening comment. I mean, you know, it's the repetition. It was really something, and I'm actually going to go chastise my staff for me, kind of like this. Okay, thank you.
I can help you come to some of your new political positions too, if you'd like.
All right, thank you so much. Mr. Vice Chair, let me, you're not confirmed for the longer term on, and that has not happened just because it takes so much floor time to make that happen. I've had some conversations with you, and I can tell that there's a little tentativeness as you talk with people like me and others, because you've got to depend on Republican votes to be confirmed. I would say to my Democratic counterparts that I think the Vice Chair would actually push back more against Republicans if he was actually confirmed. It's just something to think about. I know I called him about something the other day, and he knew Chairman Crapo was in the different place, and he was tentative about talking to me about it. I would just say that to have a guy who's sort of on the bubble really means that even when he disagrees with Crapo or myself or someone else, he's going to be tentative about that until he's confirmed. It's just something to think about. So that is my belief. It really is. And I think it's affecting his ability to push back on some of the large institutions and others and work with them and them rely on guidance. So that's just my observation. He's shaking his head up and down, actually agreeing with me. So
you might say that, Senator. I couldn't possibly comment, but
it's something for, I think, people on both sides of the aisle to think about. During this last bill passage, there was a section 402. It's actually the issue I was talking about. You know, senators here try to take care of their constituents back home sometimes, and so we have this custodial banks that are located in only a few states, and so we had some senators write a bill that did away with certain types of investments on the denominator side of the equation, right? And so everybody around here is enterprising, and so other senators figured out, hey, you know, there's a way for me to get some other institutions in under the hood if I can just change the language here just a little bit, and so that occurred during the process. Would we not be better off on technical decisions like that relative to what should and shouldn't be counted? Wouldn't we be much better off if people like you were making those decisions? And doesn't the 402 section that we actually have in the bill, doesn't complicate your life as far as setting ratios in an appropriate way? I would like for you to be really honest with me.
I appreciate the question.
And I probably will vote for your confirmation regardless, okay?
And I think I can be pretty candid. You know, I do think that the issue of the fact that the current calibration of the ESLR is a binding constraint, and particularly for the custody banks, but it's not just an issue for the custody banks. You know, it creates those perverse incentives that
you're saying what's in the bill.
And so I think that a solution to it is important. The solution that's in the bill is, you know, is one solution.
Not the preferred solution.
Well, it's a solution for a limited number of institutions. The concern that I would have as a regulator in pursuing that solution, and there are regulatory arguments for that solution, but the concern I would have as a regulator is that I don't know where one would turn off the dial, where one would stop on the slippery slope. So if one excludes a certain class of assets, in this case central bank reserves, should one also include treasury securities, et cetera? As a regulator, the strong arguments that would be made against me would sort of push me down that slope. I do think that a legislature is in a better position to resist the slippery slope for that solution. But I also think that there is a broader response.
You're saying the regulators are not good at resisting pushback from that.
Well, I think it depends on the specific on the specific issue, and on this specific issue, you've got sort of a series of arguments that at least from my perspective, I was worried would lead to a slippery slope. I don't think that that applies, however, to the provision in S.2155. I do think that there's a broader solution that's required. That's why last week we proposed to recalibrate the ESLR to address the same issue. I think that that has broad applicability across a range of firms. If the provision in S.2555 does become law, then then we'll need to think as regulators about how we adjust the calibration to ensure that we're not sort of double counting in some places.
So I know my time's up. I would just say to the chairman, I think 402 is a damaging section to this bill. In some ways, it helps lead credence to some of the arguments that Ranking Member Brown was laying out on the front end, just a little bit, not much, just a little credence, not much. And I would think that we would be better off in your negotiations with Henserling, we'd be better off dropping 402 and letting the regulators do their job. And I think left to their own accord, most of my Democratic colleagues would agree with that. I think many Republican colleagues I know already agree with that, and so I hope we will strike that entire section. With that, thank you for the time.